it's just a very different matter than trying to meet with everybody and figure out what is best for the entire community. And I really do, and have over the past 8 years, if I haven't talked with you, and my door's always open to anybody come talk to me. My phone, I'm always sitting there ready to talk to somebody. I'm usually working, but interrupt me if you have an issue. I'm very happy to speak with you. I graduated from Lewis and Clark Law School in 1998, and after working for a large law firm in Portland, Oregon, I moved back to the Tetons where I had lived before I went to law school, and I worked over the hill in Jackson for several years. And then in 2008, my brother, actually, in 2007, my brother moved out here, and we started Heimerl and Spitzer PC. And a year later, I was approached to be the Teton County Prosecutor, which I talked to my family a lot about, and I remember those days of reflection very well. I knew it was going to be a lot of time consuming. My daughter was 5 at the time. She's in high school now, so I have a lot more time even. But anyway, I went to law school not for money. I went to law school because I wanted to serve a community. I wanted to make a difference. I studied environmental law. I actually became disheartened with a lot of environmental law, and so I was in corporate practice over in Jackson. And I found that being the Teton County Prosecutor, the civil side is a lot like corporate practice. We really have a multi-million-dollar corporation here in Teton County with 9 different elected officials, many of who changed. In fact, in the past 8 years, I've worked with, for instance, 7 different county commissioners. And although everybody often thinks that there's 2 sides around here, I can tell you very true that all 7 were very different. I think we have a multifaceted community, and we need to realize that and bring the differences together instead of continuing to divide it in 2. On the criminal side, it's also very diverse. We deal with everything from infractions to, right now, the very serious capital crime we're doing. DUIs, as the sheriff mentioned, are common, unfortunately, in our community. We have a lot of white-collar crime. We have a lot of drug use. We have rapes.
Thank you, Ms. Spitzer.
Okay, sorry. Thanks.
Sorry. All right, Ms. Siddoway.
Good evening, everyone. And I want to thank the Teton Valley News and Eastern Idaho News for moderating this debate and discussion tonight. And I appreciate how many members of the audience have stuck around to the very end. Thanks so much for being here. I'm Billie Siddoway, and I'm running for prosecuting attorney because I think I can do a good job for Teton County. A little about my background. My great-great-grandparents settled over in Canyon Creek in 1886, and they started running sheep. We're in the 6th generation of our sheep ranch now, and one of the things that means is that we're migratory. So I lived in Egan in the spring and fall over by St. Anthony. In the winters, we would pack up all our belongings in a horse trailer, and we'd go out to Mud Lake, where our lambing sheds were located. And in the summer, we had the great fortune of spending our time mostly back in wall tents in the beautiful mountains that surround this valley. So I've been very fortunate that I've been able to call most of the Upper Snake River Valley my home. I left the area for a few years to get an education and some work experience. I had received my undergraduate degree at the University of Idaho in Moscow. I did some graduate work at Boise State University. I went to law school at the University of Utah, and I attended culinary school at the Salt Lake City Community College. So my work history, I got my first job when I was 12 years old, and I've been continuously employed ever since then. That first job was helping a bookkeeper get billing statements ready every month, and I did that after school 3 days a week. I had several jobs in accounting. I managed a private library. I worked for the governor. I bucked bells and sorted potatoes. And all of that led up to me going to law school in the late 90s. Over the past 14 years, I'm really proud of what I've done with my legal practice. I primarily have a commercial litigation practice in the Intermountain West that focuses on antitrust and competition law. And I've been mentored by a number of incredible attorneys and judges along the way, and have received their appraisal of my performance, which is sometimes pleasant and sometimes not. But based on their peer reviews, I've been fortunate to have been recognized by U.S. News and World Report as one of the best commercial litigation attorneys in America. For the last 2 years, I've been identified by Fortune magazine as one of the top women lawyers in the law. and I have an AV rating from Martindale Hubbell. So why do I want to be your prosecuting attorney? Well, earlier this year, I was involved in a lawsuit to have Sheriff Lyford's name restored to the primary election ballot after he was moved midway through the primary election. And I had to do a lot of thinking and preparing for my oral argument in that case about the importance of voting and the importance of having people to vote for. And that's why I decided to throw my hat in the ring. I thank the 683 people who wrote in my name on that ballot. And for those of you who are undecided tonight, I really appreciate your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Siddoway. Our first question for the both of you. Teton County is in the process of adopting a new land use code, which is a pretty complicated issue. How hard is it for the average citizen to understand that code well enough to give you informed feedback? And what is your role in helping everyone here understand that? Ms. Spitzer, we'll start with you.
Land use codes are complex. Our current code is a lot simpler, actually, than the new draft code, which is more of a form-based code. The best way to understand it, actually, is we have a lot of tools available on the website. There is a land use scenario tool where you can actually plug in your property and figure out what the zoning is and what would be allowed on it. So there's, thankfully, actually, being in modern technology, we have a lot of things that will help people understand it online. If you don't know how to use it do that online, or if you wanted to talk to me, I'm more than happy to explain the code to anybody, because one of the most confusing things I've found with it is, for people, is that the areas of impact are included in that code, even though we haven't dealt with areas of impact yet, because that is a negotiated agreement between the county and the cities. However, because it is county jurisdiction, those laws have to be incorporated in our code. It wasn't in the past. It's something that's always bothered me and that we've tried to fix, and for years have been being told it will be in the new code. And it is in the new code, but it doesn't affect the county. And it actually, none of our zones refer to the area of impact yet, because again, that won't happen until we negotiate those agreements with the cities again, which will be coming. Anyway, so that was a confusing aspect as far as livestock keeping and some other aspects of the code that I saw confusion out there with. Kristen Owen now, she got married, is very adept at helping anybody, as am I. And as I said in my intro, I'm very happy to help anybody understand the code, whatever provision you have. If anybody has any questions about what they can or can't do with their property based upon the future code, I'd be more than happy to answer that.
Thank you for that question. The proposed land use code has taken up a lot of my time, frankly, in the last month. And I know that a lot of you have been working diligently to try to make your way through it. One of the best things in my experience of going through it is that I was able to do it with my co-candidates for office. And it's amazing when you get people who are experts in different fields how much easier it is to try to understand and figure things out. And of course, Harley Wilcox comes from the real estate and development side and has also done quite a bit of construction and was great help to me in helping me understand some of the reasoning behind certain setbacks and other issues. And of course, Mark Ricks comes from a strong agricultural background and was really able to help me figure out what things worked and didn't work for farmers in the community. I think I took a look at it from more of a legal perspective on what things are allowed under Idaho law and what things aren't when we're getting into the grounds of a taking, and what we have to do to comply with some of the statutory requirements under the land use code. So having a good team of experts that give input on the development code, I think, is really critical. And one of the things that troubled me as we went through the planning and zoning process is that I felt like some comments weren't taken seriously. And I hope that one of the things that will happen as the Planning and Zoning Commission reopens this matter for further public comment is that everybody's voices will be heard and given meaningful consideration, and not just the formal letters from the Land Trust and Friends of the Teton River, but those members of our farming and ranching communities, new members to the community. I think that those should all be given some serious weight, and that we should take everybody's comments seriously and respectfully.
Thank you very much. Our next question will be for you as well. Imagine if elected, if elected, one of your roles will be to provide legal guidance to the county commissioners in an impartial way. How would you approach that role?
Well, thanks for that. I agree with what Kathy Spitzer said about, I don't think it was Kathy, about the, it was, the county commissioners being like a mid-sized corporation. And that's who I mostly deal with, mid-sized to large corporations. And I'll tell you how it works. They come to me and they say, this is what we want to do. This is where we want to get. And I help them develop the legal strategy to get there. The prosecuting attorney doesn't set the objectives for the county. The county commissioners set the objectives for the county. The county prosecutor, when it comes to the civil context, really outlines those strategies. And my practice is to outline as many as I can come up with and then let those decision makers decide. The county commissioners are like a board of directors for a corporation. And when I'm handling a case, the board of directors makes the critical decisions about where we're going to go. And so my personal feelings about how it should come out might influence some of the strategies that I'm going to lay out, but I'm going to lay out every strategy that allows the decision makers to get to the objective that they want.
Prosecutor Spitzer, same question. I know you've been through, was it 7 different commissioners you said during your time?
Yes.
I was going to say, same question. How have you developed your approach to offering impartial advice to those commissioners?
I agree with Billy. As far as advice goes, they are your clients and you are there to provide them advice. You're not a super fourth commissioner or anything. And oftentimes I think people lose sight of that, that we are there to defend their decisions. We're there to give them legal counsel. If I am asked a question by the county commissioners, I refer to the many statutes and case laws that dictate what we can do if they are available. Unfortunately, a lot of our statutes in Idaho are not terribly clear, and there's not a lot of case law being a small state. So sometimes you are left with just your good opinion and the opinion of the experts that you talk to, of which I always reach out to ICRIMP, our insurance provider, on many issues. I talk to the Attorney General a lot. I talk to other attorneys who are experts in the field before I render a decision. I think it's important to have it be a collaborative effort on a lot of decisions, unless there is clear guidance in the law. And unfortunately, again, in Idaho, there's not often that luxury. But again, it is like a corporation. They are very similar to a board of directors, and they call the shots. And unless you are there to guide them as much as you can in their decision making, but you are not there to impose your own will upon them at all. Thank you.
In other counties in Idaho, there have been issues with the county commissioners declining to follow the advice of their prosecutor. If that situation were to arise here, how would you remedy that? Ms. Spitzer, we'll start with you.
If the county commissioners decline to follow my advice, it's a difficult question just because I'd have to know what the matter was exactly. I mean, obviously they can make a lot of decisions on their own, and I guess and a lot of those my advice wouldn't be solicited. If my advice is solicited and not followed in something that would have legal liability, I would again reach out to ICRIMP or something and have them talk to them and explain to them if they weren't listening to me, or I would again reach out to the AG's office or somebody else who maybe I thought that they would listen to. And then if that wasn't working, even though unfortunately it would cost the county money, I would highly encourage them to hire another attorney and get their advice. I think legal advice is very important. Not all attorneys agree on everything, as we know, otherwise we wouldn't have lawsuits. And so, perhaps they could get the advice of somebody else. And if I believe under the law, if I gave my permission for that, there's something about that, new prosecutor training course that everybody undergoes that says, I remember them calling us omnipotent only because if they listen to us, the county commissioners are not individually responsible for their actions. Or if they don't want to listen to us and we get somebody, we give our permission for them to get advice from somebody else, the same is true. And I would always give my advice. And I have actually several times told the county commissioners, if you think you may not agree with me, I'm happy to find other opinions because I appreciate other opinions as well.
Thank you. Ms. Siddoway.
Thank you for this question. You know, it's not uncommon to see this situation in the business world, and it's come up a number of times in my practice. In antitrust law, a lot of times clients want to push the envelope and get to the closest place they can without getting sued, and sometimes they're okay taking the risk of getting sued, but they want to get to a point. So you give them the best advice that you can on all of the strategies, and if they pick a strategy that you think puts them at risk, that's their choice, and you've got to respect it and go with it. And if they do get sued, then you come in to defend it. There are some situations under the ethical rules that allow us to not have to defend, and there are procedures under Idaho law that allow the commissioners to hire a different attorney if they don't think that you're going to be able to handle the job because of your opinion on the matter. But certainly that's not unique to local government. That happens all the time in the legal world, and the attorney gives the advice and the decision maker makes the decision.
Thank you very much. This is an elected. Oh.
Nope. I just thought you're going to ask me another
sorry,
question.
No, that was my bad.
Might as well stay standing
this
up.
is an elected position, so politics do play a role in this. Speaking to that, if elected, how will you work with the sheriff's office to bring successful prosecutions, no matter the results of that particular race? We'll start with Ms. Spitzer.
I'm sorry, how will I work to bring successful prosecutions despite?
Regardless of how who wins that race.
Okay.
And will that affect?
Sorry, I just didn't catch the age, which obviously is important. I have worked with Sheriff Lyford and the deputies of the sheriff's office for 8 years. My office has been, I think, incredibly successful in our prosecutions. We work very hard and very closely with the deputies. I know that there's, obviously, it wouldn't be a question if people thought I couldn't work with him, but I don't think that anyone in here can point to any case that the sheriff's office and I have not been able to work on. And granted, a lot of those have been with a lot of help from Lindsay, depending on what the case is. I do think that Lindsay has worked with the sheriff's office as well. The job of the prosecutor, however, is really to take the evidence that the sheriff's office gives us, to go to court with it and do our best with it. Also to make that very critical ethical call as to whether we have enough evidence to move forward to charge somebody. That charging decision is extremely important, and I've never entered onto it lightly. I need the best evidence that I can in order to make those decisions. If there's friction, as some people have said, I think a lot of that comes from the fact that it is frustrating to try to make those very incredibly life-changing decisions for another individual, another family, be it the victim or the defendant, when you are kind of shooting in the dark and you don't have all the information that you need. So to answer your question again, if Sheriff Lyford and I are the prosecutor and sheriff again, we will go forward doing our best to serve this community.
Thank you very much. Ms. Siddoway, same question. How would you work with the winner of the sheriff's race, no matter who it is, to bring successful prosecutions?
Well, I'm happy to say I have good relationships with Lindsay Moss and with Tony Lyford. I happen to see Lindsay quite a bit more often because he's the bailiff in the courtroom, and I frankly see Kathy Spitzer and Chris Lundberg probably more often than I see the sheriff. And so I think coming into this last spring, I probably had a little more of the perspective from that group. I did get to spend a little time with Sheriff Lyford as we were driving over to Boise and back for that hearing on getting him back on the ballot, and I pushed him a little bit to tell me his side of the story, and surprisingly he was quite reluctant about responding to some of these things. But over the last several months, I've had an opportunity to speak with law enforcement officers in other areas, particularly over in Teton County, Wyoming, who are strongly supportive of Sheriff Lyford and were able to respond to some of the concerns that I'd received. And also from the former officers who had been here and actually worked for Sheriff Lyford, and I just can't say enough good things about what they have said to me about his training abilities, the way that he's handled those cases. But I have absolutely no difficulties working with either sheriff who's elected. There's one thing that's unique about being a prosecuting attorney in most of my civil practice. You want to win no matter what for your client. When you're acting as a prosecuting attorney, your role is much more to find the truth, not necessarily to get a conviction. And that changes the equation a little bit, because sometimes you do find out that things weren't as they first appeared. And I think that I wouldn't have any problem working with Sheriff Lyford or anyone to make sure that we seek justice and not just convictions.
Thank you. This next question is for both of you. What is the biggest thing you have learned in your career as an attorney? Ms. Siddoway, we'll start with you.
Boy, that's a big one, but I have a cousin who grew up over in Sugar City. Her name's Laurel Thatcher Ulrich. She's a Pulitzer Prize-winning author and is currently a history professor at Harvard. And she's probably best known for the phrase, well-behaved women seldom make history. But my favorite quote from her is that in eastern Idaho, there's 3 ways of doing things: the right way, the wrong way, and the Siddoway. And I've taken that as a compliment because I think that a family trait that I've inherited and that I'm quite proud of is the ability to find creative solutions. And things aren't always black and white, particularly in the legal field. And being able to come up with a creative way to look at a problem, you might not get a win-win for everybody, but at least you can get something that's fair and people can live with, I think is one of the experiences, one of the things that I've learned as an attorney that I'm really proud of.
So the question is one of the things, say it again.
One of the biggest things you've learned in your career as an attorney?
People don't always agree. No, that is true. People don't always agree, but as far as, it's a big question, because I think I've learned so much in my career as an attorney that I'm going to have to nail it down to the same collaboration that what Billie was talking about, because I do think that innovative solutions are really important in anything, because people don't agree, if you can use your imagination and find a solution that will help people, help both sides, you generally can have a win-win for everybody. It's one of the most, can be one of the most creative offerings to make, to have as an attorney, to be able to resolve a dispute where 2 people or 2 groups of people are so separate and they're not coming together to figure out a solution for them. Those same solutions also go into things like drug court or any of the other innovative solutions that we've been able to come up with in the county. I started, like a diversion program years ago for when I first started, a multidisciplinary team for child abuse, all sorts of programs that I feel are innovative solutions to try to fix a problem, such as, again, the drug court thing that was mentioned, I believe, with Sheriff Lyford and Mr. Moss, that I think is very important for all participants to partake, all law enforcement, judge, prosecutor to partake in, because people are in crisis often. It's not always just about, at least from the legal end right now, for me, it's not about the civil collaboration, but also the criminal collaboration. And there's a lot of people who are in crisis and make mistakes and get in trouble, and they need our help. And the more we can help figure out how to help them, not only are we helping them not reoffend, reduces recidivism, which is a really fun word to use, recidivism. It means reoffending. And people don't reoffend when they're helped, and we address their issues. And so, again, addressing people's issues and coming to good solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Siddoway, Prosecutor Spitzer mentioned, several innovations and changes she had made to the prosecutor's office. What innovations or changes do you have planned for the office if you are elected?
This is an interesting one. I think so much about legal work is how you approach things on a case-by-case basis, not so much the structure of your law firm. I think one of the things that is frankly more of a commission issue, but I would like to encourage is that we go out actively and seek more public input on some of these questions, like the development code, like the solid waste fee. Sometimes nobody shows up to the public hearing, and so it's assumed that nobody cares, when really there are a lot of people who are just incredibly busy and they can't make it to all of these things, and they can't even look up and figure out what's on the agenda every week. So one of the roles that I would like to be able to play and encourage the commissioners to do a little more is actively go out and talk to people that you know are going to be affected and get their input, solicit that, instead of just waiting for them to show up or come to you.
Thank you very much. Prosecutor Spitzer, during your time in the office, what have been your biggest accomplishments or the things that you look back on with the most pride during your time?
Again, when I first started, there was not a big diversion program. I implemented a new juvenile diversion process that is a state model. At least I've been told it is. I don't really know if it is, but maybe more of a model of juvenile justice. I've implemented restorative practices, which I think are really important with juveniles, addressing the harm that they've done to the community, and the victims also have a healing process with that, which is positive. Again, the multidisciplinary team to address child abuse. I just recently developed a uniform eyewitness ID policy that actually today is being reviewed by the Supreme Court. I was supposed to be in Boise, but I decided to be here with y'all instead. But that is really exciting because we need a uniform eyewitness ID policy in this state, and it's really important that we have one. I actually serve on 2 other committees, the Supreme Court Committee for Courts and Counties that deals with a lot of security issues and other things in relationships with the courts. I'm also on the Justice and Professionalism Committee and a Criminal Rules Committee. So statewide involvement has been very important to me, not just keeping, there's a wider issue throughout Idaho with criminal procedure and other things, and it's good to work with other prosecutors and judges throughout the state. I successfully defended the commissioners all the way up to the Supreme Court on important land use decisions. I've recovered over $100,000 in bonds. I don't know. I feel like I've had a wonderful 8 years, and I don't want to bore you all with the rest of and I would like another 4 more. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy Spitzer, a Democrat running for prosecuting attorney, and Billie Siddoway, a Republican running for prosecuting attorney.